One thing my mom always told me is that we can't do hard things alone, especially when it comes to raising a neurodivergent child. And I've always taken that concept and applied it to everything in my life, especially when it came to building All Brains Grow. I knew that it wasn't just going to be Lynette, my mentor, and I. At the end of the day, we are better together. And while Lynette is the creator of it all and my supervisor, my mentor, I needed someone by my side every day, laughing through things and pushing me through it and inspiring me and teaching me in a different way than Lynette was. And that was Krystel Alhayek, that I'm so excited to have on with us today. I met Krystel through a family relative. She worked with their autistic boy, and Lynette trained her, was working with the family. And when I started working with the boy myself, doing neurofeedback, I got closer to Krystel because she started giving me tips about how to handle and understand this boy, and she taught me a lot. And we had a bit of a connection, but nothing more than that. And then throughout the years, as Lynette and I were starting to really work closely together, building out All Brains Grow, it just became so evident that Krystel had her place in building this with us, because no one knew Lynette the way I did, and Krystel was the closest to that. And so we're together in this. She's my teammate, and we have so much to share with you together. And I hope to be having her on the podcast more often.
The other day, a mom told me, I feel like my son is raising me while I'm raising him. And I think that perfectly describes what flexibility is. And our children, especially neurodivergent children, teach us so much about ourselves, and they push us to see things differently, to unlearn maybe like rigid ways of thinking, and to approach situations with more openness. And when we insist on a fixed idea of how things should be, we miss out a lot. We miss out on understanding how things could be, and that's where flexibility, I think, becomes so powerful.
Progress can feel impossible. From having an autistic brother, to raising a deaf son with cochlear implants, or working with families as a neurotherapist, I've seen how overwhelming it can be to feel like nothing is changing. But life has taught me that growth is always within reach. Every brain can learn and adapt no matter the diagnosis, and believing in someone can shape their future. You see, you have a choice: to live a life weighed down by limitations, or to embrace a life filled with possibility. And I'm here to help you make that choice by sharing stories of caregivers and experts that have changed my life, the tools I wish I had known, and the conversations that have questioned my beliefs. I'm Lelua, and this is All Brains Grow. Hello, Krystel.
Hello.
Welcome. So you were so we met through a family who has an autistic boy, and they had a big team of people who were working with him. A lot of these people, when they first met Dr. Lynette Louise, who is our mentor, didn't like her. They found her ways to be a bit too innovative and too different. And if we want to use words that people talk about in general, maybe quite the opposite of what an ABA professional would be like. What made it that you didn't fall in that group of not liking her? Or did you not like her at first and then you learned to appreciate what she was teaching and then in time you saw
Yeah.
the magic in it.
First, I didn't have the impression of loving or hating her or like not liking her. I didn't have this. I had in mind that someone is coming to teach me something, and I was so interested in learning. So this was my first impression when I saw her, and I wanted to learn. Um, Actually, the what happened with me is I was learning from Lynette, and then I was applying her teachings. And I was updating her every time. Like, okay, I did this, I did that. What should I change? What do you think about that? And she was always like giving me advices, tweaking the techniques that I'm using, and with like so much flexibility, so much like natural environment, freedom of choice, respecting the child, what he wants. And so these are things that are really good because you can see the comfort you bring to the person you're working with whenever you are treating them as responsible kids or like this. So what I found different and is that the results that were happening were were uh, were so fast also. For me it was the change like this. I started like I remember that we had sentences that started like he started to use sentences that wasn't there because we were using it to give him power. And this power over his words like made him use more of his words also, and made sense for him that my words, if I use my words in the right way, in the right environment, they have power and I can use them to make sense to my life or change something in my life. And this was for me very inspiring and very challenging in some times also because we were dealing with meltdowns, but it was all the time challenging in a good way because I was seeing progress all the time. And yeah. And one thing I will also want to talk about is, stimming. This is what I face with someone from the team because she was against like stimming and at the same time working. But Lynette.
So what was his stem, just so we can tell people?
So for example, he takes a ribbon and he plays with his ribbon all the time. So he has a ribbon in his hand. For the other girl, it's for her, if he's playing with his ribbon, then he's not listening to you, then he should stop so you can work properly and get results. But on the other hand, Lina told me no, he can play with his ribbon and he can stim as long as he's listening to you. We never said like, no, you have to put it aside and now sit and work, because whenever I do that, he will become edgy, frustrated, because his focus is only on how or when I want to get back this ribbon because I really need it. So this wasn't a problem for him, and the ribbon was there all the time and I didn't have a problem. But whenever the ribbon was a barrier for us, then I would stop and I would just explain that I'm not gonna accept this because you're not focusing with me. We're not communicating. We're not interacting together. So let's find a solution. Do you want me to give you maybe some time for you to play alone and then you can put it on the side, or you just want to play with it and also be with me? And it's his choice. It's gonna be, or he put it on the side next to us, just whenever he wants to grab it back he can, or he will choose to keep it with him and then focus with me. So it's about his choice. And I give him the responsibility and the freedom to choose what he wants. And this respect will make him willing more to learn.
There's a word that you use often when you speak about the way we work with children, and that word is flexibility. Why would someone have to be flexible?
During my journey with Lynette, all the past years, and with BioPlay, I learned that flexibility is a mindset and is about recognizing that there is no one size fits all method, like never. Instead of like seeing behaviors as problems that need to be fixed all the time, flexibility allows us to see them as communication, and it teaches us to step back, observe, and adapt rather than forcing a child to fit into an expectation or our expectation that may not be right for them. And it's what allows us to build real connections and create a learning experience that feels very natural for the child.
So if I think of flexible, my mind goes to having no boundaries. If we're talking about compliments, it goes to maybe a parent who's loving and complimenting all the time. And that sounds really scary and not productive and not towards a direction of growth in a way. I wonder if this is what people think when they think of the word flexibility. I believe what you're saying in our way of working is that there's a way of being flexible where you get even more control than if you were rigid.
Yes, definitely. Actually, I'm going to give you another example about flexibility. You know, when you give kids choices, you give them plenty of choices, but sometimes parents will tell me, but if I give him choice, it means that I'm giving him the right to choose, and this can't happen because he will be like the boss all the time, or he wants to decide all the time, and sometimes it's impossible. He shouldn't decide because he doesn't know. Yeah, I understand, definitely. Because when we say let them choose or give them choices, it's not about if you have to travel on Monday or Friday. It's not about the big decisions. It's the small decisions where do they need like the white balloon or they need the red balloon? Does he want to wear the blue pant or the red pant? Like small decisions where we give them power to choose, and whenever there's a moment where they can't choose, they will allow us to choose for them because we already gave them lots of freedom in choosing things for themselves. But whenever it's time to be like more serious, where it's our decision, then they will allow us to do that. But if we're all the time choosing for them everything, then when it's really serious, it's gonna be complicated, like even more complicated, and we won't be able to like have power over them. So I think whenever you give power, you will get power at the same time also. So, and people sometimes think the opposite, which from my experience, I've never gave power to a kid without getting also the power back, because it becomes fun at this also, and they listen more.
And I wonder if, because I'll tell you how it made me feel, and then I want to know how it made you feel. All these beautiful things you just said, as a professional or a caregiver, when you hear the fact that you're allowed to do things like that, with me, it always makes me feel like you removed like an elephant off my back. And I think it's always important. The reason why I want to ask how it made you feel, because sometimes we read about approaches and we think, oh, this will help my kid. But it actually helps you sometimes even more. And then that's the greatest gift. And so tell me, how did this make you feel to have all these tools? Like, I know we always talk about how it helps the kid, but how did it help you?
Okay, so having these tools actually made me feel a kind of relief, because I know that using these tools are going to solve any problem that I have. And I always trusted these ways because they always worked. And they are not one way. That's why, because if there is a specific thing that I'm doing and it's not working, then I know that there is a different way of doing this so it can work. And I never like lose hope of the result that I want to get. I always know, and I always believe and trust that our ways and the techniques that we use are going to work because they are so varied and we can also always tweak them and change them to work for the kids and for their comfort and happiness and like freedom and what they want and what their family wants also.
I don't know if that's a hard question, tell me, but do you think to get to where you are today, because you're talking in such a beautiful way, and we can both agree that we want all parents and caregivers on this planet to speak this way and believe this way. But I think for a lot of people it can sound very far-fetched or maybe impossible or to get to, or like a dream. Do you think for you specifically, was there a belief that you had in the past that you think held you back from all this? Or
I have one thing that really made a difference in my life is the assumption that I make. I used to assume that a meltdown will happen, and then the meltdown will happen. And when I learned not to assume these kind of things and believe in a way where, okay, I'm now afraid and I'm worried because I don't want a meltdown to happen, then I shouldn't think about it and keep on thinking about it all the time, because my assumption will affect my body language, it will may affect my attitude, and then I will maybe be creating the assumption that I'm thinking about all the time. And when I learned to stop assuming, or to at least try to shift my way of thinking, and
how did you stop that?
By noticing that I'm assuming things. And why would I assume the bad things all the time? Why would I assume every time that a meltdown will happen? Why wouldn't I assume that maybe he's not feeling well, but I know that he will help himself, because I'm already teaching him how to help himself. So let me remind him of the things that...
So would step one be have parents think about when they're in the middle of a situation?
To observe themselves, definitely.
Observe them.
Because they need to know and to understand how much they affect their kids and how the environment also affect their kids. Sometimes it's not their fault, and it's not the kids' fault also. It's something happened, and we have to accept that things also happens in some ways where we can't control or we can't have power over it, because this is life. But also when we observe ourselves and we try to believe that things are going to be different because we're working on them, then we will have different results.
This was All Brains Grow. Thanks for joining us. You can head to allbrainsgrow.com/podcast for more resources and support. This show was produced and edited by Alina Fansa and myself, Lelua. Music by Blue Dot Sessions.